Well, handsome, what are we waiting for?
Oh yeah, Catwoman. Oh, can't wait. Yeah. Woof! I mean... Meow. No!
Hello everyone, this is Champion Man 90. Ugh! Damn it, I can't see a thing in this.
If you want to get to know a character, learn about their interests, goals, or desires, their butt is probably not going to give you that information.
I tell you what, Anita, stop being Captain Obvious and give us some actual proper analysis. I, for one, have never understood how you reach all these fucking, like, points and shit. Like, how do you come to this conclusion that butts are somehow harming women in games? You know, people who don't exist in games. This always interests me. How do you come to these terrible, horrible conclusions? Because it's not just the feminism now, is it? There has to be something else. There has to be something in your brain that clicks. It's not very intelligent, but it clicks. You look at a bum in a video game and you just go, why are they showing me that? How am I supposed to know what the character's like? It's like you almost forget what they're saying. You just zone out of it, all the sound in the game. You know, there might be some, you know, voice acting, an important part, but then you look at the ass, you see a big ass looking at you, or a small ass, it doesn't matter. And then you just go, oh, ass, ass, why is this here? Why am I seeing this? Ah, that says more about you than it does about us.
It won't tell you much about who they are or what they're thinking or feeling at any given time.
Well, no shit, Anita. Tell us something we don't know. You see, gamers don't tend to look at the arse to know what a character is like. We tend to know exactly what a character is like within like the first half hour of a game or something. We'll know if they're a whiny bitch-ass motherfucker in any, you know, anime. Or they'll be a badass motherfucker like, you know, Alan Jensen or something like, I never asked for any of this. I don't think game developers are putting the bums in there because they want to show something like what the character is like. I think it's just an aesthetic thing that has to be there because every human being has an ass, okay? We all have an ass, right? It has to be there. And there are big bums, there are small bums, there are medium-sized bums, there are fat bums, there are skinny bums. And they're not there to tell us anything about the character. It's just there because human characters have bums. Anthropomorphic animals who don't exist have bums. Hell, even real animals have bums. But I don't get it. What is the point of this? I'm surprised you even got 6 minutes out of this bullshit. But you know what? I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
But video game designers often choose to put tremendous focus on the butts of certain characters while going to almost absurd lengths to avoid calling attention to the butts of others.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. You're going with the sexist thing as you always do. Why is it that women's asses are paid more attention to than males? How can we never see any male asses around? I can explain this, but it might just defeat the whole point of making this video. But fuck it, why not? Hey, we're in for a ride, people. Look at the female body. Look at the male body. A male body is very flat. We are flat guys, okay? We're flat things. We're flat objects, okay? There's not a lot of, you know, curves and shit. I mean, yeah, some guys have big bums, some have little bums, but by and large, it doesn't stick out as much as a woman's because women are curvy and, you know, there's all sorts of contours and shit. And women's asses stick out for an evolutionary reason. Because when we were in the trees, when we were monkeys, right? How do you know, apart from looking at the face of said monkey, remember, we're on all fours, we're not bipedal yet, we're not bipeds at this point in time. How are you supposed to get attracted to something? Well, you're on your all fours, and you see a nice ass, and you're just like, damn, I want to mate with that thing. That's why they stick out like that. That's why your bum sticks out and mine doesn't. It's an aesthetic, evolutionary thing to get a mate. We don't need it as much now because we're bipeds and we now look at boobs more. Or at least, if you believe the myriad of tests, we still like arses. But besides the point, boobs are more important now because we're looking like that rather than like that on our floors. And why does this have anything to do with game development? Well, that's why the bums are like that, because that's fucking what humans look like. And maybe, just maybe, it's just an aesthetic choice that doesn't do anything. And like I said, male bums are just not really anything to look at, are they? Besides, I'm sure there's video games out there that have guys with big bums. I don't know. But I know where you're going here. You're going to cherry pick some examples and be like, men don't get this, when really there's not much to draw when it comes to men, is there? But, oh, whatever. Carry on, Anita.
These carefully crafted choices developers make about camera angles and clothing significantly impact how players think about and relate to these characters.
You can prove that, Anita. Citation needed. How do you know how a character looks will impact on the player's, opinion on this character? Why does their opinion care about this character? They're not real people. But we know what you're going to do. You're going to try and say, well, if they think about this character this certain way, they must think about women this way. And they must think about men this way if men don't get all this shit. Anita, it's just an aesthetic art thing. Like, what the hell?
Third-person games with female protagonists typically display those characters in a way that gives players a full-body view. A classic example of this is the original Tomb Raider games.
Anita, it's a third-person action game. Every character that you play gets a full-body view. Men get a full-body view. Look at Kratos, for example. Here's a great example. Look at that muscular demigod of a man. That unrealistic body type. You can clearly see he's got something going down there and up there. You can see the full body of him, but that's just something that's inconvenient for you because that goes against the narrative, doesn't it? And obviously you're going to go with another old-ass game like Tomb Raider 1 or something, where there's any of the old ones that aren't relevant anymore and were made on old systems that couldn't do what we can do now and make realistic body types and clothing. But please, do go on.
Which are presented from a third-person perspective wherein protagonist Lara Croft's entire body is visible.
No shit, Anita. We know what a third-person action game is. We know what they look like. Even a layman who's probably never played a game could tell you what it looks like. They can clearly see, yes, this is the case. We can see her body. We can see all the men's bodies that we play as well. What is your point, Anita? What is your point? That just the act of looking at a person's body, a woman's body, will titillate someone and make them be into rabid misogynists. Is that the point you're trying to make here?
In these early Tomb Raider games, Lara's butt is typically right in the center of the screen.
Every bloody character model that you play in a third-person action-adventure game, or any kind of third-person game, is in the center of the screen. That's where your bum is, anatomically. Why are you making such a big fuss out of this? Now you're just offended by the simple shape of a human, the way we've evolved. Jesus Christ, Anita. In your world, we all wear burqas and we don't see what anyone looks like. That's your kind of world. That's the kind of game you want to play. Well, go ahead and make it. Or make a game like the Scythian, or whatever the fuck it was called, where we look like big gelatinous blobs of shit, and it is just like, that's not a person, that's a face on a chest with a bloody crane thing, like an origami crane for a head, and stick legs, and stick arms, and a sword and a shield. That's what you want games to be, and what we all want to look like in these games. You are a puritanical person if I've ever seen one, Anita.
A camera orientation which, along with the sexualized clothing the designers choose to outfit her in, places a tremendous amount of emphasis on that part of her body.
That clothing is only sexualized to a puritanical, sex-negative feminist, or a fundamentalist Christian, or an Islamist, or a very deeply conservative person anyway. By conservative, I don't necessarily mean religious. They could just be traditional and don't like people showing too much skin. I don't know if that's a religious thing or not, but hey, it's up to you. It's up to the person. It's an individual, a traditionalist. Only they and you would see that what Lara's wearing as sexualised, over-sexualised. She's just wearing a tank top and shorts. Yeah, it looks dumb in the winter, but it's a PS1 game. It's a PS1 game, it's a video game, it's not meant to be realistic. I mean, if we were going to complain about that shit, what about in the Resident Evil movies, where, like, sometimes Mila doesn't even get dirt on her face. Her lovely makeup remains as pristine and gorgeous as it does all the time. But you're complaining about aesthetic shit that doesn't mean anything. It's the gameplay, the voice acting, the story that matters and conveys the shit to the player, not necessarily the aesthetics. No, I can't think of a single gamer that places them in a high priority. Nobody cares. If it's cliched and if it looks crap, and if it's, you know, rendered terribly, or if it's just shoddily done artwork, maybe then we'll complain. But there's nothing wrong with the way that Tomb Raider or any woman in a game looks. It's all subjective, but to say that that is sexualized, no, it's just not, Anita.
In dozens of third-person games with playable female characters, the character's butt is brought to the forefront, and that's where the player's focus is directed.
No, Anita, your focus is on the arse, not us. You can't speak for the rest of us. You cannot say that our focus is on the arse. You cannot say that. See, if I'm just looking at the arse, I can't see where I'm going, can I? I can't direct the model to a part of the level that I need to get to. We don't have time to oogle an arse all the way through the game. If a game was like that, the game would be unplayable because we wouldn't be able to play it because it's constantly looking at the arse. It's just, that's dumb, Anita. That's bullshit. Citation needed once again. You're just asserting and projecting even. You look at the arses, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we do.
In Batman Arkham City, for instance, the player's gaze is drawn to Catwoman's behind, which is emphasized by her costume and exaggerated hip sway.
It's Catwoman. She is that type of character. She is the type of character that's open about her sexuality, very flirty, and she dresses in leather. Everyone that dresses in leather has their figure magnified. That's just what leather clothing does to you. There's not much that gaming developers can do. They have to reflect that in the game. She dresses like that in the comics. And she also dresses in different ways too. She doesn't always dress like that. And I do think you can buy skins for her where she doesn't dress like that. You don't have to have her like that. And besides, Batman's in the same angle as that. And his cape's flapping and he can see what he's wearing in his leotard or whatever he's wearing. Well, he wears armour in that, but you can still see everything. It's the same camera angle. So what if the arse is there? It's gotta be prominent because she's wearing fucking leather.
The ceremony! The Sisterhood will never forgive me if I am late.
Golden Axe Beast Rider makes extremely sure that we notice the protagonist's butt just before we take control and start playing.
Really, that shot was there to show the enemies are about to charge her, not necessarily to show her bum. That is you oogling her bum and then projecting because now you feel really dirty about it, Anita. Hey everyone, there's the title for it. Anita Sarkeesian oogles asses in video games. You saw it here first, people.
And here in Tomb Raider Underworld, to say that Lara's butt is being emphasized would be putting it mildly.
She's in a swimming costume, and you, in that footage, or whoever it is in that footage, I don't know if you stole the footage from somebody else like you usually do, or you filmed the footage yourself, you captured it, and said, oh, look at them emphasizing it. No, that is clearly someone using the controller to emphasize the body of the model. That is bullshit. That's cherry picking. That is some kind of fallacy there. That is just disingenuous of you to do that. But even still, you're not making any point. What has this got to do with anything? This has nothing at all to do with anything. You've not even made a proper argument. In fact, you've not made an argument. If anything, you're just complaining about bums. And you're oogling bums and you feel dirty about it. And you have to tell us that you feel dirty about it. Anita, calm down. It's okay to like an arse, especially if it's the same gender. It's okay.
Incredible. The carvings are clearly similar to early Germanic design, but this is far older than the 5th century.
And this happens all too
You
often.
can't miss it.
So what? They're quite clearly made to be sexy, to appeal to lesbians and straight men. So what? So what? You're not proving anything here. You're just ranting and raving about some bullshit that has nothing to do with anything. This doesn't speak about representation in games. These are just people who aren't real, dressed in a certain way, and the camera's looking at them or something else in a certain way, and they're in the foreground or the background, whatever. Come on, Anita, give me an argument.
Let's contrast the way that women's butts are emphasized with the sometimes absurd lengths taken to cover up or hide men's butts.
You are now asserting on what the intention of the character designer and the game designers are doing with the male bodies now, are you? You cannot prove if they're trying to cover up the male physique, because they don't cover up anybody else's when they're not wearing much clothes. Like in, say, any RPG where you can run around in the nude or semi-nude. They're not trying to cover it up there. Kratos, for example, nobody's covering up him. You can clearly see his bum, but again, males and females have different clothes which emphasize different parts of their bodies, and we also have different body shapes. So no matter what we wear, something is going to be emphasized. Men have bulges, women do not. Women have bigger hips that are shown more when they wear tighter clothing. Men, not as much. Or not at all. Men have more muscles that are showing naturally compared to women. Women with big boobs, when they're wearing something tight, it will be emphasised. This shit is reflected in games. It's not always because they want to titillate someone. Maybe they just want a girl who looks that way, or a man who looks that way. They're not trying to cover up anything. They're not being conservative about the men. But whatever. This is a complete non-argument from you.
If some of this footage looks jerky, that's because in some games, trying to get a glimpse of male characters' butts can feel a bit like wrestling with the camera.
Or you're trying to make it look a particular way, and you're just making excuses. We've seen what you do. You like to misrepresent what games look like. You're not bullshitting any of us, Anita.
Common ways men's butts are hidden are by preventing the player from seeing below the character's waistline, or employing a more over-the-shoulder camera angle, which has the added benefit of keeping the character's butt safely out of the frame.
That proves absolutely nothing. In the Prince of Persia thing, you have a cliff that is blocking part of the camera. You do realise cameras in games can be affected by objects within the game, right? You do realise that. And Gears of War is a shooter. And those other games probably have shooting mechanics, which means it's going to be over the shoulder. If there was a woman in that game, she would also have her entire bottom half of her body obscured. It's common sense. If an over-the-shoulder shooter is going to have that angle regardless of who you're playing, because so you've got better aim. It's not about showing girls' asses and saying, look at that, look at that, look at that, oh, ain't it brilliant? No. Again, nothing. And you just being disingenuous and misrepresenting the games as per usual.
The most amusing solution is to simply include a cape, tunic, long coat, or very conveniently positioned piece of tattered fabric, which actively prevents the player from getting a clear or sustained look at the protagonist's butt.
This proves nothing. You're asserting about people's actions. You're asserting about what these people are making, their choices. You do not know why they've chosen this. You do not know why they've chosen this particular design for that particular character. And by the way, in Assassin's Creed, women also wear those clothes if they're assassins. I don't think you wanted to tell us that, did you? But they do.
For the purposes of this video, I tried to get a glimpse of Batman's rear end, but it's as if his cape is a high-tech piece of Wayne Industries equipment designed to cover up his butt at all costs.
You clearly see his bum in that clip, do you not? And you know what's weird? I think I've just noticed another reason why she's done this. She's not just doing this because she's ranting and raving about women and how they aesthetically look, but she wants to see men's bums, and she's oogling them, and she can't do it, so she's complaining. She's objectifying these characters. She's doing what she accuses us of doing, and who constantly berates us for doing these things. They're their own worst enemies. They're hypocrites. Can you believe this, people? Can you believe this? And like, Batman wears a cape, Anita. You're not going to see someone's ass with a fucking cape, are you? God, sometimes I just think you have no sense of common sense whatsoever. You have none whatsoever. You're just an idiot who just sees things and goes, why can't I do that? I'm sorry if I keep hitting the microphone, people, but this is just infuriating, so please forgive me.
I like to jokingly refer to this aspect of a male character's costume as the strategic butt covering.
Well, this is all a joke to you. You're a con woman after all. You and Full Mac are only in this for the money, although I am beginning to think that you guys are beginning to believe your bullshit. Or at least some of it, otherwise you wouldn't be able to con so many people. But of course it's a joke to you. Of course this is a joke to you. But then again, I think that might be an excuse. You want to oogle these people, and you're trying to figure out a way to do so without the feminist powers that be from kicking your ass, if you excuse the turn of phrase.
Of course, not all games with male protagonists keep the character's butt obscured or out of frame like these games do. The real issue is one of emphasis and definition.
They're in the exact same angle as the Tomb Raider game, Anita, and in the other games. I told you, they all look the same. They all have a certain look. Aesthetically, you know, the look of the game, I'm not talking about the camera angles, they may look different, but the camera angles are always the same in the third-person shooter, or an action game, or an RPG. They're always the same. There's only so much you can do with a third-person and first-person look. There's only so much you can do. That's the exact same emphasis, the exact same thing. You can clearly see the bodies, but again, like I told you, men and women's bodies are different, and our clothes are different. Therefore, things are gonna look different and be emphasised differently. Just naturally. The games are reflecting reality, not reality reflecting the games, Anita. This is how art works. But hey, it's all a bloody sexist conspiracy to you, isn't it? And you just see these guys' asses. Well, just go watch some porn.
A significant portion of third-person games with female protagonists call attention to those characters' butts in a way that's meant to be sexually appealing to the presumed straight male player.
No, presumed. She doesn't know who these game developers are appealing to. And why the hell would she use an example from Bully? That's a kid! The main character's a kid. He's below the age of consent, surely. That's creepy, Anita. That's creepy and a terrible, terrible example. That's a kid. Nobody wants to see kids like that. Apart from paedophiles. Like a certain moderator of yours. In
this regard, the way that women's bodies are depicted is significantly different from the way that men's bodies are depicted.
It seems to me they're kind of depicted somewhat in a similar way. So that because the bodies are different, because we're gender dimorphic, as much as your terrible pseudoscience in feminism and social justice would have you believe, there are going to be differences in the way that they look and are presented, because we look different. It's common sense, Anita. Get it.
There are a few examples of male protagonists who are wearing clothing that calls attention to their butts, but for the most part, men's butts, even when visible in the frame, are de-emphasized.
I don't think the butts of either genders are particularly emphasised unless they're needed to. For example, Catwoman's is obviously going to be emphasised because she's a sexual character. She's a sexual person. That's her personality of the character. That's what she's been written as for as long as I can remember, as long as many comic fans can remember. Since her first debut, which could have been years and years ago, she's always been like that. She's the femme fatale. Femme fatales are traditionally like that. Also, big fantasy characters, regardless of gender, are always going to look like that. Conan the Barbarian, anyone? Jesus Christ, people.
Plenty of male heroes wear baggy pants or jeans.
That's what men wear, Anita. Women don't tend to wear that shit.
Uncharted's Nathan Drake among them. But nothing about his visual design or the jeans he's wearing encourages you to focus on his butt as some sort of defining aspect of his character.
Firstly, most male gamers are straight, so they're not going to be looking at his ass, are they? Secondly, not many gamers are straight women, so they're probably not going to be looking at his ass. Mostly men play Uncharted, sadly, so it stands to reason that they're not going to be looking at his ass. The lesbians who are playing that game are not going to be looking at his ass, but the few straight women who are, they'll be looking at it. But again, you're just asserting. Most of those female character models, their asses are not meant to be a particular part of their body that's meant to emphasise their character, unless they're a sexual character and it's whatever. Most of those characters just have a bum. They just have a bum. That's all they do. You are literally just projecting and asserting bullshit intersectional crap onto them. It doesn't mean anything. Most of the time, it doesn't mean anything. God, Anita, you're just clutching at straws here. You're desperately trying to grasp them, but you just can't.
By contrast, this emphasis on the butts of female characters communicates to players that this is what's important. This is what you should be paying attention to.
No. Citation needed. I need you to actually give me proof that this is what the developers want me to look at. Because I can't look at it all the time. It's clearly not emphasised as much as you think, because I won't be able to get anywhere in the game. Would I?
It communicates that the character is a sexual object designed for players to look at and enjoy.
Citation needed, but that's what you have been trying to get the male characters to be. You're a hypocrite, and don't lie, you've been trying to oogle these characters' asses the entire video. You have lamented how there's a lack of male ass. You're as bad as the rest of us. Or at least how you think the rest of us are. You're as bad as us. You are a hypocrite.
And by explicitly encouraging you to ogle and objectify the character, the game is implicitly discouraging you from identifying directly with her.
So like how you've been perving on those male characters then, right? But it's just research. It's just research, Anita. The thing is, the games are not telling us to do that. That's like saying that they're telling us to go and kill people. You do realise that the logic that games do not cause violence applies to the same thing that games do not make people want to be sexist and objectify people. You have done nothing but objectify these male characters in this video. So don't come complaining to me about that shit when you've just been doing it. And citation needed, by the way.
Strategic butt coverings and camera angles that obscure characters' rear ends are not an accident. They are a conscious decision made with great care, and the flip side of this is that designers often do the opposite when the protagonist is female.
But you can't prove that though, it's just an assertion. Hitchens' law.
This difference in how male and female characters are framed often extends into the advertisements and box covers. Women's butts are front and center, and it's even become a depressing joke that their bodies are twisted and contorted in uncomfortable or unnatural ways so that their breasts and butt can be visible in the same shot.
They're actually very natural body positions. I've seen cosplayers do them. And by the way, male characters have their chests emphasised. Because the male upper body is where most of the attraction comes from. Like I said, we're bipedal now, so it stands to reason what you can see with your two front eyes while standing with 2 feet is going to be attractive, isn't it? Two can play at this game, Anita.
In contrast, when men are depicted from behind, there's great effort taken to cover up their rear end, often with other images or shadows.
A coincidence does not make an argument, Anita. How do you know they're trying to cover up a man's bum? Men's bums are not this horrible thing that nobody wants to see. I don't understand. You're just asserting and making crazy shit up. This is just a coincidence. Look at fucking Kratos there. Nothing's been covered up there. Just wearing his kill or whatever you call it. What are you trying to prove here, Anita? This is not an argument. You want to see a man's bum. Go and see a man's bum. Make the game that you want to make. This is what we keep telling you guys. But no, we have to change the games to suit you.
Of course, female characters can also be framed in ways that aren't objectifying. A good example of this is the episodic adventure game Life is Strange, in which the protagonist's butt isn't emphasized or centralized. The camera angles work in conjunction with the story to encourage us to identify with her as a human being.
I can see her bum. And just because Alice is wearing a dress doesn't mean that someone's not going to be objectifying it, even actually subjectifying, really. But again, Life is Strange proves nothing. It proves literally nothing. What? So they use an over-the-shoulder thing. So does Walking Dead with Clementine and Lee. You're proving nothing.
Sadly, the box art for the third-person action-adventure game Beyond Good and Evil emphasizes and sexualizes Jade's butt.
A normal person sees that and doesn't see anything sexual about that at all. She's just looking behind her. People look behind each other. Nobody gets titillated by looking behind. I don't understand. This is not sexualized. And this is a game that you have personally, you know, shilled for. This is a social justice pipe dream, isn't it? This is the game that you think all people should make. And yet it doesn't ascribe to your bullshit, ever-changing, superfluous standards. Jesus Christ, Anita, be consistent.
The game itself, however, demonstrates that the Nathan Drake approach of outfitting a character in clothing that doesn't emphasize their butt, and not having the camera center it or focus on it, can work just as well to humanize female characters as it does for male characters.
Again, this is disingenuous because you're showing camera angles that don't show her bum. You are doing this on purpose. You have found footage or created footage to show your bloody agenda. That's all you're doing. Look, just all bloody third-person action shoot, third-person games are like this. If we had emphasis on the bum all the time, we won't be able to play the game. If you notice when you're playing Arkham City as Catwoman, not Batgirl, the camera changes when you're fighting, because if it's constantly looking at a bum all the time, you can't win the game. You can't play it. What you're describing, it does not happen. It just doesn't happen. It's stupid. Nobody would buy that game. You're an idiot. This game is doing exactly what every other third-person game is doing in this video. There is nothing unique. There is nothing remarkable about Beyond Good and Evil. Nothing beyond its mechanics. Nothing. It's doing exactly the same. Yet somehow it's different. It's just the fucking same, Anita.
So to be clear, the solution here is not to simply show more butts of male characters.
Yes, it is. You implied that.
Equal opportunity butt display is definitely not the answer.
But you were calling for that. Why are you complaining about all this shit if that's not what you want, Anita? Are you just trolling us at this point?
Rather, the solution is to de-emphasize the rear ends of female characters, so that players are encouraged not to ogle and objectify these women, but to identify and empathize with them as people.
Anita, gamers don't identify with any video game character. They don't do that. Most don't do that. Most just use it to play the game and to experience the world and the story. The character's completely superfluous. It could be a bloody block. It could be Pac-Man. It could be anything. And they would not identify with it. If anything, they project themselves into it. The character is just an avatar for them, experiencing the world. You're not meant to identify with these characters. And you can assert all you want and claim all this, you know, oh, the developers just want them to ogle them and bloody objectify them. You can't prove that. You can't prove that. You've not given us any quotes or any evidence that this is what the game developers want. You've just shown us some camera angles and gameplay footage, which, knowing you, could be doctored, could be taken out of context, as it routinely is, like what you did with Hitman, and say, look, they're clearly doing it. We can't trust you. Even then it doesn't prove anything. It's like just using the Bible to prove how life was made at this point. This is just a creationist argument.
This is not an impossible task, given that game designers do this all the time with their male characters. It's time they started consistently doing it with their female characters too.
Corey Cole, how can you sit there and attack Jordan Owen when she's creating bullshit like this, attacking games? Leisure Suit Larry, I'm surprised, was not used as an example in this video, because that could be used for all the titillating ass shit, couldn't it? How can you sit there and attack Jordan Owen and let this shit slide? I can't believe it. I can't believe she even made a 6-minute video, and I've just made a half-an-hour video on it. I didn't want it to be half an hour, people, but it had to be, because it was just a mile a minute of bullshit. So, anyway, Until next time, I'll see you all later.